Just a little heads up before we begin the video. In my previous video, I went over the three genres of Hmong films and how they have changed as I have grown from a kid to an adult. And if you're not of Hmong ethnicity or are unfamiliar with it, I would advise you going to check out the video from before, which I'll link down below, or just do a little bubble here. Because I'm going to go into this review, no holds barred. But if you're willing to venture into some weird but fascinating movie territory, you're welcome to do so. Anyways, enjoy the video. Before I begin my review, let me give some background knowledge you have never heard the story of Nuj Nplhaib, or as the English title I've given it, The Tiger's Bride. Nuj Nplhaib, aka The Tiger's Bride, was a three-part movie released on VHS supposedly in the mid-90s, if I were to make an educated guess. It's about a young man's girlfriend getting captured by demonic tigers, resulting in him having to go on a journey to save her. The story is a bit like The Princess Bride, but instead of a European setting, it's in a Southeast Asian setting. And I'll just leave that as the plot synopsis for now and save the rest for the review. You can easily find all three parts available on YouTube if you type in the Hmong title. However, there are no English subtitles for the movies, and I felt it would be nice to retell this story to non-Hmong speaking audiences through a review. The Hmong culture is deeply rooted with oral storytelling and story embroidery. So when it comes to the folktale of The Tiger's Bride, which was eventually adapted into a movie, it's impossible to truly know when or who told the story, since it has been passed down from generation to generation, orally, mind you. Nowadays, the content of the movie may be no modern masterpiece, and yes, it is cliché, yes, it can have plot holes, some big ones as you'll come to see, and yes, it could even be cinema sin to hell. However, the uniqueness of its cultural impact is undeniable. To the first, second, and possibly even third generation of Hmong Americans, it is undoubtedly the most well-known and most popular Hmong folktale that everybody and their grandmother knows. And half of that is thanks to the movie. Not only does the movie highlight the life of a young Hmong man and Hmong woman back in the home country, it highlights our cultural fears and the importance of family. I'm sure that the producers, actors, and even entire crew had no idea how much of an impact they were going to have. Thanks to the popularity of their movie, it made the actor of Nuj Nplhaib an action star that even other Hmong directors gave him small cameos in films like The Opposite of Blood. It's gotten to the point where people don't recognize him for being an actor, but for being that character. Like how you don't just recognize that Robert Downey Jr. is Robert Downey Jr. the actor, you realize that's Tony Stark. Not to mention, the actor of Nuj Nplhaib is starring alongside Dua Mua, another popular Hmong actor, in a film about Hmong Americans called The Harvest. I mean, who would have thought? There are even children's books about this story in libraries, for crying out loud. Even the original movie was parodied years later with a movie called Nuj Nplhaib Special. I mean, there is no way this movie did not have any impact within the culture, and you can't tell me otherwise. And now that you've gotten some background knowledge on the story, onto the review. The movie is divided into three parts, and for the sake of this review, I'll try to trim out the fat and just tell it as a 3-hour movie with separate acts, like the Snyder Cut. The first act of the movie is mainly a love story and a setup for things to come. It begins with our main character, Nuj Nplhaib, doing his chores around the house when his buddies appear and ask him if he wants to go holler at girls with them. And being the good only son he is, he declines to hang out since he has too many chores to help out with, and bids his pals farewell. His two buddies then come by a river where they see our second main character, Ntxawm. They are about to talk to her until Mbatong, a comedic actor with an iconic face in Hmong comedies, thinks he's better at flirting and chats with Ntxawm for a bit before she tells him, "I'm not feeling well, maybe another time, there's plenty of other girls around to talk to," which is code for no, before leaving with the water she gathered. And if you're wondering why this stranger flirting out of nowhere business isn't all that weird to me, it's just what Hmong people did back in the day, back in the old country. Oh, you and I from the same land? Speak the same language? And we don't have the same last names? Let me get to know you, girl. Nplhaib's buddies then reach the home of Ntxawm's friend, Ga, and this time, his other buddy decides to chat her up instead of Bathong because of last time. But he still embarrasses the both of them by stealing the spotlight. Later on, Ga and Ntxawm discuss about the two guys who chatted them up, and Ga mentions if they know about a boy named Nplhaib. No particular reason is elaborated on why he is name dropped, but it can be assumed that he's the pretty boy name being thrown around the village. The next day, Bathong comes back to visit Nplhaib and he tells him about Ntxawm and how pretty she is, which intrigues Nplhaib to go with him to see how pretty this girl is. So they both travel a good long distance to go meet her as they pass forests, fields, hills, and only stop when Nplhaib hears a woman singing in the distance. And if you have Hmong grandparents who listen to this music, then you know how annoying this can get. Yep! Nplhaib interrupts her obvious lip singing and introduces himself. The two talk in what I can only describe as very Shakespearean love dialogue. I'd even compare it to the Star Wars prequel love dialogue between Anakin and Padme.
You're making fun of me.
No, I'd be much too frightened to tease a senator.
Meanwhile, Bathong is left out and forgotten about. On a different day, Nplhaib is playing his thing, which is basically a Hmong bagpipe, but more like a bamboo/reed/brass pipe. Two random villagers recognize that he's really skilled with it and mention that a contest is being held between the best qeng players within the village by a village official. Nplhaib enters the contest and surprise! Ntxawm is present there. First challenge of the contest, tightrope playing. You tried. Tinka, 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 tinka. Second challenge, swordsmanship. I have no idea what this has to do with playing the thing, but sure, it's a part of it. Nplhaib's skills impresses Ntxawm, and she gives him her embroidery she worked on, basically akin to a princess handing her handkerchief to a noble knight. Third challenge, martial arts combat. Okay, now you really lost me. And of course, the winner has to be our main character. Later on, the two meet up on several occasions to talk with each other, as their love slowly blossoms from awkward talking to lovey-dovey bonding. This would eventually catch the attention of two witch kids who stalk Ntxawm, finding out where she lives, and bringing the news back to their demonic tiger friend. One night, Nplhaib travels a far distance to play the flute in front of her house and talk to her. Yeah. Apparently, Nplhaib walked the entire night just to hear her play her Jew's harp. That's some dedication, brother. This also catches the attention of the two witch kids, who appear to scare off Nplhaib with the wind, but he plays it off real cool like he isn't scared before he leaves. The next night, Tiger Boy comes out from the forest, takes a humanoid form, and attempts to shoot his shot. She doesn't recognize his voice and ignores him. Well, damn. Once morning arrives, he is visibly pissed off. Tiger Boy starts throwing a tantrum until two witch kids tell him to take the form of Nplhaib. Once the next night comes around, he's now in the form of Nplhaib and is able to sweet-talk Ntxawm successfully, even if he does sound a little sickly. Props to the actor for giving such a different demeanor by playing a different character. Really puts Robert Downey Jr.'s words into play.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
And so for the next few nights, Tiger Boy pretends to be Nplhaib chatting up Ntxawm, and eventually telling her he is going to marry her when the time is right. Eventually, the real Nplhaib shows up to talk to her again when he has a nightmare about her being attacked by a tiger. He finally makes time to talk with her again, and she is confused on why he stopped mentioning the idea of marriage. The two also begin hanging out in person again, Ntxawm continuously wonders if he'll actually marry her, when in reality it was Tiger Boy who said that, and not him. She does not find this out until the third or fourth night when Tiger Boy talks to her again, and she sees his true form through a crack in her house. This is also the same night where one of the witch kids casts some sort of nightmare spell on her before leaving. Later on, a man from another village comes over to Nuj Nphlaib's house to ask for his cleaning services, since he was nominated as the best player of the village. Nuj Nphlaib agrees to do the job, but since the village is far, he'll be gone for 3 days. He tells Ntxawm about this on their last date before his departure. The 3-day absence worries her greatly, so in order to put her mind at ease, he gives her a ring and promises that he'll marry her when they meet again. After the date, Tiger Boy and the witch kids track her down, and once more he pretends to be Nuj Nphlaib again, and fools her into believing it was really him. Although he doesn't take her, all he did is just scare her. I'm pretty sure the director was an Evil Dead fan. Just look at the scene being reenacted here. Nuj Nphlaib then sets off to play at the villager's wedding, and Ntxawm eventually falls ill, due to the spell the witch kid put on her. And so in his 3 days at the other village, Bathong finds out about the death of Ntxawm from Ka, and he runs from one village to another to tell him the bad news. Nuj Nphlaib immediately leaves that village, job unfinished, and asks Ntxawm's parents if the news he heard is really true. Her parents confirm that she has passed on, but he runs off to her grave to see for himself. When he arrives there, he is so heartbroken and grief-stricken that he starts crying and self-harming until he loses consciousness. This is when the spirit of Ntxawm briefly enters the mortal realm to relay the message to him that it was a demonic tiger spirit that took her and that she did not die of illness. This is when Nuj Nphlaib awakens after hearing her voice and quickly runs off to begin finding her, ending the first act. This is where we enter the second act of the movie, where he'll be going on his journey to find her, and eventually we get more supernatural and fantasy-like elements. If Act 1 was a love story, Act 2 is an adventure story. Side note, remember when I said it was demonic tiger spirits who took Ntxawm's spirit away in Part 1 through a nightmare-induced illness? Well, in Act 2 it seems like it was retconned to where she was physically taken instead of being spiritually taken. The demonic tiger spirits like Tiger Boy are now physical threats instead of spiritual ones. Well, for the time being. They are still magical, but no longer spirits, I guess you could say. Because some events happen towards the end of Act 2, which contradict the hell out of that retcon so hard, and it gets all sort of fantastically confusing. Long story short, just expect some big left turns in the story. Not world-breaking, just big WTF moments in movie logic. Just a little side note if aspects from Act 2 seem to contradict Act 1. Back to the review. A few months have supposedly passed since Ntxawm was taken by Tiger Boy, and now Nuj Nphlaib has been imbued with magical energy from a wise man of some sort in order to help him combat the demonic tigers and bring her back home. Nuj Nphlaib forges a sword that he constantly sharpens. He asks for his parents' permission to test the sharpness of his sword on their only chicken, only pig, and only cow on the farm, which they both let him do so after he pesters them about being their only child. Shit, if he was my kid or my brother, I'd tell him hell no. Got me f***ed up. He tests the sharpness of his mighty blade on the chicken by tossing it across the roof and displaying superhuman amounts of speed by running from one end of the house to the other to cut the chicken he just threw. Not sharp enough, apparently. Next, he tests it on a pig, which he does the same thing to. Not sharp enough still. Finally, he tests it on a cow. That'll do. That'll do, pig. That'll do. That's kind of f***ed up, I shouldn't say that. But thankfully, all that slaughtering didn't go to waste. He packs the meat of all 3 animals into a bag as food for his journey, and arms himself with his super sharp sword, trusty bow, and a quiver of arrows. He then says goodbye to his parents before setting off on his journey. As Nuj Nphlaib wanders through the jungles in search of demonic tigers and their tracks, He sets 2 chicken eggs by a tree stump for some reason we'll find out later, and decides to sit and rest for a few minutes. This is when Ntxawm, Tiger Boy, the 2 witch kids, and Tiger Boy's family come across him sitting by a stump. One of the witch kids then casts a sleeping spell on him, which knocks our main character out. The witch kid then tells them the coast is clear, and the entire tiger fam all walk by him, craving for his flesh. Ntxawm then voices her disgust and threatens to leave if they eat a man alive in front of her, and so Tiger Boy commands his siblings not to eat him. One of the Tiger Bros disobeys him momentarily by sneaking their way to Nuj Nphlaib's body, and Tiger Boy attacks his Tiger Bro to teach him a lesson. This is when Ntxawm strategically leaves behind her shoes as an excuse to come back to Nuj Nphlaib's sleeping body. And remember those 2 eggs by the stump? Yeah, those were meant to distract the 2 witch kids. The witch kids find the chicken eggs on the tree stump and become so entranced by them that they just separate from Tiger Boy's group entirely. Ntxawm eventually tells Tiger Fam to wait because she, air quotes, forgot her shoes. And she does this 2 or more times for 2 different items she supposedly, air quotes, left behind, which also tests Tiger Boy's patience. She attempts to wake him up 3 times, not knowing that he's been put in a deep sleep through witchcraft magic. When her 3rd attempt fails, she gives up, starts crying, and leaves her silver bangle with him as something to remember her by, thinking this will be the last time she'll ever see him. Tiger Boy, Ntxawm, and Tiger Fam eventually resume their journey to the Tiger Cave as they pass through hills, a river, and build camps to rest for the night. And apparently have done so for multiple days. And we only find out about this passage of time through the various shots of greenery and vegetation growing around where Nuj Nphlaib sleeps, which means our main character has been sleeping for God knows how long. When camping and traveling with Tiger Boy, Ntxawm is shown hospitality and is treated as their equal since she is now Tiger Boy's wife by force, meaning he owns her because he took her by force. It's the patriarch system from back in the days, etc., etc. Moving on with the story. A long time passes and Nuj Nphlaib eventually awakens from his sleeping state. This is where he finds the tracks of human and tiger footprints. Before he can continue tracking them down, he has to deal with the 2 witch kids that are still apparently infatuated with the chicken eggs. They've probably been at it for weeks or even months, and it all comes to a quiet halt when Nuj Nphlaib imbues his magical energy into one of his arrows and shoots the 2 witch kids. John Rambo would be proud. In order to make up for lost time and track down where Tiger Boy is taking Ntxawm, he uses his superhuman speed to run through the previous areas they've passed before. This is where he finds their old camps and campfires. The movie then momentarily shifts its focus from our main characters and shows us how much time has passed since then by giving us a scene with Nuj Nphlaib's parents. The movie shows us that his parents are now visibly older and that he was apparently asleep for years. His mother tells his father that she had a nightmare about him, but his father tells her to be strong and that he has hopes that Nuj Nphlaib will return to them one day. Back at Tiger Boy's camp, Tiger Boy's sister offers Ntxawm a raw crab, but she refuses. This is when Tiger Boy does the courtesy of cooking the crab for her to eat. Perhaps Tiger Boy isn't so bad after all. Later that night at Nuj Nphlaib's camp, however, when he's asleep in the branches, a voice calls out to him to return home because his mother is apparently sick. The disembodied voice is revealed to be a random stranger who orders him to climb down, but he's not that easily fooled by the evils in the woods. Tiger Boy and the group eventually reach the Tiger Cave. Tiger Boy tries to welcome his new wife to his home by kissing her, but she refuses. Then this Tiger Boy turns into a handsome Tiger Boy. He tells her that he understands her anger, but promises to love her forever, even if he is a demonic tiger. Ntxawm is still not convinced, even with the changing of his form. The Tiger Fam eventually goes out to hunt for food, and Ntxawm goes out to another part of the cave to sit alone. This is when she hears a lovely tune being played from afar. Turns out, this is Nuj Nphlaib, not too far away, playing this lovely tune on a leaf. She then responds with a leaf tune of her own. This medley of leaf tunes then allows Nuj Nphlaib to track down her location as he climbs the mountain on his way to the Tiger Cave, just like Stallone in First Blood. Or Cliffhanger. Once he reaches Tiger Boy's cave, he surprises Ntxawm with a falling leaf, and the 2 lovers are reunited once again. They make small talk and reminisce about missing each other. This is when she tells him to leave because the tiger fam are returning from their hunt. Nuj Nplhaib refuses to leave, however, since he has come this far and will not leave without her. Understanding his frustration, she tells him to go hide instead, and he does so. Tiger Boy and his tiger fam then return home and notice a different kind of scent lingering, suspecting something or someone. But Ntxawm tells them all that it's probably their smell from hunting. Handsome Tiger Boy then approaches Ntxawm again and offers her dinner in the cave. The tiger fam eventually decide to go to sleep and leave Ntxawm to eat her meal. She runs back to Nuj Nplhaib, who is hiding at the top of the cave entrance, and tells him to wait while she attempts to wake each member of the tiger fam with her threading needle. Each tiger family member she pricks, including Tiger Boy, does not bother to wake up, so she returns to Nuj Nplhaib with the good news that he can climb down. When he climbs down, he tells her to wait outside the cave while he goes inside. To do what, I wonder? I don't know. Maybe just thank them for holding his girlfriend hostage, share a couple drinks, laugh about it. No! He's going to slaughter them all.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals.
Nuj Nplhaib enters the tiger cave and begins slaughtering the entire tiger fam, and Ntxawm's Pikachu surprised about this. And just when he's about to give sleeping Tiger Boy the finishing blow, she protects Tiger Boy. Why is she bothered to grow protective of them now? I'm unsure. I feel like she could have grown some empathy for the tiger fam during her time with them, but she seemed to dislike all the hospitality they gave her up until the point when she knew Nuj Nplhaib had come to save her. I'm pretty confident that if Nuj Nplhaib hadn't come along, she would have just learned to love Tiger Boy and his family in due time. Other than that, the sudden change of heart from her just seems to be done for dramatic purposes. So she refuses to let him slaughter Tiger Boy, so he tells her to look at the couple on a swing in the sun. And this lady does so, because the plot needs her to get out of the way for Nuj Nplhaib to kill Tiger Boy. Not the smartest move in the movie, but it'll do. Getting her out of the way, Nuj Nplhaib swings his sword at the sleeping Tiger Boy, only to discover he had been tricked into slicing a piece of bamboo. Tiger Boy then laughs before revealing himself. He then tells Ntxawm to stick with him, and she almost goes, until Nuj Nplhaib speaks some sense into her. This is when Tiger Boy calls out Nuj Nplhaib for trying to take his wife and killing his entire family, and that the only way to settle who gets the girl is to fight to the death. Nuj Nplhaib accepts his offer, and they both head out of the cave to fight. What ensues for the next 4 to 5 minutes is a Wu-Tang treat. Tiger Boy starts using
Tiger style.
martial arts, where his hands catch on fire, he spits fire, and teleports, while Nuj Nplhaib uses his sharp-as-hell sword, attempting to slice and dice Tiger Boy. Hell, he even cut a whole tree with one swing. The martial arts choreography and cinematography here is very Wu-Tang-like, especially with the zoom-ups, reverse shots of them jumping onto ledges, and wire work. Given that this movie is probably 20 plus years old, it amazes me to see all the love and care go into the climax of Act 2. The actors, or stunt actors, even dive off tall ledges and into trees. They took those falls, and I applaud them for it. Nuj Nplhaib and Tiger Boy seem to be evenly matched in hand-to-hand combat as the fight goes on, but things change up when Tiger Boy starts teleporting through the forest and attacking at intervals. Our hero then infuses his sword with magical energy, and it becomes a flaming blade. This finally gets Tiger Boy to come out of hiding, but he gets struck by the sword, before finally being stabbed in the gut. This doesn't seem enough to stop Tiger Boy, however, and he pushes Nuj Nplhaib off of him before running away and hopping back to the tiger cave, where he dies at his wife's side. Nuj Nplhaib arrives in time to see that Tiger Boy has officially bitten the dust, but Ntxawm has taken on a tiger form for some reason. Yeah, it's never explained why she was able to, but it just happens right out of the blue. So he teaches her a lesson by chopping her tail off. This reverts her back to her human form, and she asks Nuj Nplhaib why did he choose now to destroy her supposedly happy life with Tiger Boy. I still love the movie, don't get me wrong, but I get that it's an oral folktale and that some things just happen out of the blue with no explanation, other than to raise the stakes. I'm not condemning it, nor am I condoning it as bad storytelling. It is what it is. We'll just pretend that Ntxawm grew to love Tiger Boy during the journey to ease this contradicting character development for the review. After she asks why he decided to tear up her supposedly happy life, Nuj Nplhaib tells her that his only goal was to bring her back home to him, and that's final. So she willingly goes along with him with no other choice in mind. However, The area where the tiger fam resides seems to act like a labyrinth now. Everywhere the two of them go, they seem to end up in the same place they were before. When Nuj Nplhaib finally asks Ntxawm why they keep going in a circle, she tells him that she must drink 3 cups of Tiger Boy's blood in order to get out of the loop. No particular reason, she just happened to have the answer on hand. Nuj Nplhaib then gathers 3 cups of Tiger Boy's blood for her to drink, and as they are about to leave, Tiger Boy's spirit leaves his body and begins terrorizing the couple once more. Tiger Boy then possesses Ntxawm and tells him that he won't let neither of them leave and uses her body to strangle him to death. Unwilling to harm her, Nuj Nplhaib uses his magical energy instead to force out Tiger Boy's spirit from her body. He then shoots one final magic arrow at Tiger Boy's spirit, making him flee. It is unanswered if Tiger Boy is truly defeated, and that's the last we ever see of Tiger Boy. Ntxawm, now weakened from the possession, slowly grows weaker and weaker during their journey back and is unable to carry on. She eventually tells him that she needs a new body in order to be able to carry on. And it is unclear if she is still in tiger spirit form or human physical form, so now the entire continuity of her character is all jumbled up. For the sake of this review and making things easier, just imagine that she's possessed and that the only way of reviving her actual human soul is through burial. Kind of like the scene from Evil Dead 2013 where David buries Mia. Nuj Nplhaib resurrects Ntxawm and the two finally head home after years of being gone. They arrive back in the village and see some of the villagers playing the thing. Nuj Nplhaib approaches them and offers to play it. As he's playing it, he brings bystanders to tears with the song he's playing and catches the attention of his now aged mother and father, who then finally reunite with their son again after a long amount of years since he had left home. He brings them to see their future daughter-in-law, and they all live happily ever after. For now. Whew! A lot of things happen in Act 2. Think I might have to split this video into 2, but we'll just have to wait and see in post. And if Act 1 is a love story, and Act 2 is an adventure story, Act 3 is a revenge tale. In Act 3, both Nuj Nplhaib and Ntxawm are a happily married couple, despite the crazy/contradicting journey they both went through. They have a child coming along the way, and although it may seem like everything is back to normal now, the story is far from over. Remember the 3 cups of Tiger Boy blood she drank? Yeah, that gave her abilities to have his kids. Congrats, it's a tiger? She gives birth to Tiger Boy's babies, but she does so in secret. She tries to kill the abominations, but doesn't have the heart to do so, and instead keeps them hidden in the forest. She returns to Nuj Nplhaib after the whole debacle, and lies to him that she had a miscarriage. And since he loves her so much, he forgives her for the miscarriage as long as nothing happened to her. And so they carry on with their lives. But as they carry on with their lives, Ntxawm sneaks out to the forest to feed her 2 tiger kids from time to time, and Nuj Nplhaib begins to grow suspicious of her. Eventually, he pretends that he's about to head out to the farm, only to really see where his wife heads off to when he's not around. This is where he discovers her secretly feeding her tiger kids, and grows so angry that he picks up his sharp sword once more, and goes into the forest to kill the tiger kids. He kills one of them, which Ntxawm witnesses and faints. Nuj Nplhaib tends to her when she faints, but an ominous voice of a child speaks from beyond the forest. It's Tiger Boy Jr. Tiger Boy Jr. calls Nuj Nplhaib cruel for killing his twin brother, and warns him that he'll return in 3 years' time to fight him to the death, before disappearing into the forest. I wasn't lying when I told you this was a revenge tale, eh? Now you know. When Ntxawm comes to, she becomes sad and angry at Nuj Nplhaib for killing her tiger kids, but he refuses to acknowledge it as her kids since they were monsters, and he hopes that she'll forgive him. But it's not that easy. Boy, imagine this shit on Maury. When it comes to the results of Tiger Boy Jr., Nuj Nplhaib, you are not the father. As the 3 years pass, Tiger Boy Jr. grows. We then see our good old buddy Mbothong again, still attempting to holler at girls, and this is when Tiger Boy Jr. shows up to scare the wits out of him. But Tiger Boy Jr. also has an interest in this girl, and becomes Handsome Tiger Boy Jr., and he definitely has better game than his father. He strikes up a conversation with his new girl named Dee, and asks if she could show him her village since he's new around town. The two eventually begin to fall for each other. We bring our focus back to Nuj Nplhaib and Ntxawm, and their life is about as normal as can be. It seems they've overcome their past trauma and have learned to love each other again. Turns out, they live in the same village as the girl Dee, the girl who Junior has fallen in love with. The plot thickens. Tiger Boy Jr. begins revisiting Dee at her farm constantly, and begins to ask if she knows about a man named Nuj Nplhaib. And why, of course, she knows a man by that name, and his wife. This is when Junior sets out to talk to his mother. It's an awkward introduction at first for Ntxawm, since she thinks he's a young man trying to holler at a married woman, until he asks if she remembers giving birth to 2 sons in the forest before they were killed by her husband. She begins tearing up, and Junior reveals that he was the only one that survived that day. He then asks her who his real father is, to which flashbacks to another retconned aspect of the story, where apparently she fell in love with Tiger Boy, aka Junior's father, before he was killed by Nuj Nplhaib. The truth about his father and family being slaughtered angers him, and he vows vengeance upon Nuj Nplhaib, even when his mother tells him to forgive him and leave it in the past because of how vengeance will only provoke more violence. Junior ignores his mother's words and leaves to settle the score with Nuj Nplhaib, but before he does so, he trains with a training montage. I don't think it's a secret anymore at this point. The directors definitely love American movies. Nuj Nplhaib is on his way to the farm one day when Junior attacks. This is where Junior reminds him that he was the Tiger Boy who lived and vowed to return and fight him to the death in 3 years. Nuj Nplhaib recognizes who it is and attempts to greet him respectfully. Junior then tries to start the fight, but Nuj Nplhaib refuses to fight him since he is unarmed and is only on his way to farm. Junior then chastises him for being able to murder an entire family, but not have the balls to face him head on. Nuj Nplhaib refuses to fight again, to which Junior gives him only 1 day to meet atop the village mountain to fight, before he teleports away. The next day, Junior meets up with Dee one last time to break the bad news to her that he has to leave, and that they cannot be together because he is a demonic tiger. She doesn't care that he is a demonic tiger, and that she still loves him the same, but Junior is unsure if he will return from his fight, and that Dee will only find out his fate tomorrow when she comes to the top of the village mountain. The next day inevitably comes, and Nuj Nplhaib hesitantly sets out to fight the son of the demonic tiger that took away his wife all those years ago. Junior appears ready to fight, but Nuj Nplhaib attempts to ease the young tiger's raging heart by telling him to leave all the previous conflicts in the past, and that he'll take Junior in as his own son to make up for his past mistakes. Junior continuously attacks out of hatred, and Nuj Nplhaib chooses to flee instead, refusing to fight for as long as he can. He attempts to talk some sense into Junior once more, but Junior still vows to avenge his tiger family, leaving Nuj Nplhaib no chance but to fight back. The news of the two fighting is eventually told to Ntxawm through Dee, and both Junior's lover and mother run to the scene where they are fighting. This is where his anger and thirst for vengeance gets the better of him. And the fight comes to a complete stop. Junior apologizes to his mother, and she forgives him, but she wants their fighting to stop. Nuj Nplhaib wishes for him to stop too and be their own son, but Junior refuses their offer since he is not human and that he is a demonic tiger. They all wish for him to stay and be a part of their lives, forgiving him for all he's done, but he still refuses and apologizes for causing so much distress to them all. This saddens his mother and Dee greatly since they are unwilling to part with him. Junior comforts his mom by telling her that he'll always watch over the humans as a protector in their time of need. Finally, Junior thanks Dee for loving him and hopes that maybe one day he'll reunite with her as a human in his next life. And so, his stepfather, mother, and lover depressingly watch Junior leave as he walks off, transforming into a tiger and disappearing into the fields. Thus brings the story and movie of Nuj Nplhaib and Ntxawm. to the end. I did not expect this retelling of the events of The Tiger's Bride to be this much of an endeavor, but I'm glad I did. Shed some light on a Hmong movie classic through a YouTube video, while also educating those who may be unfamiliar with the culture. Rewatching all 3 parts of this classic was nostalgic and fascinating. This movie could have easily fallen into the $10 rack of forgettable assembly line Hmong movies you'd see at Hmong Village Marketplace or Talachapo back in the days. But it stands out from the rest because of its simple story. The story of Nuj Nplhaib is literally the story of a knight fighting a dragon to save the princess from the tower. That hero story is deeply embedded within. Not only does it tell a simple story, it does something way ahead of its time for Hmong movies. It shows the consequences of an action. As the 2 sayings go, no good deed goes unpunished, and actions have consequences. And this is how we get to the story of Tiger Boy Jr. and his quest for revenge. It shows that violence is literally a circle. That thing goes round and round. If that isn't great storytelling, I don't know what is.